Today I want to do something a little bit different. Think of this as my daily driver, but for coffee. It's the brewing method that I'm using right now, something that I'm favoring right now. It's not the best brew method, it's not the ultimate brew method, it's just something that I'm enjoying. And in this one, it led me to an experiment that I think is worth sharing that I think is super interesting too. So right now, I am brewing a lot with this. It's the Hario switch. It's Hario's answer to the Clever coffee dripper. Now, the Clever I've been using a lot at home because I'm trying to work on my brew guide for the Clever. And one of the challenges with this brewer is the drawdown time. Now, the way it works is very simple. You put a filter paper in, you put coffee and water in, you let it steep, because at the bottom there's a little stopper that only opens when you put it on a cup and then it drains out. I really like steep and release brewers. I like them a lot. This combination of infusion at the start, where the coffee and water just hangs out together, with this kind of percolation paper separation phase, I just like the end results a lot. Now, in my research and testing, I thought it would be interesting to compare the Clever to the Hario switch. Now, the way that it works is a little bit different to how the Clever works. This has a kind of metal ball bearing acting as a kind of stopper right at the bottom. When you push the switch, it pops the ball bearing up and your coffee drains out. But really, it is a glass V60 in the base here, and I thought that was interesting to test. But it led me to test with other filter papers to try and find faster drawdowns, and that led me to an interesting result. I know you probably have questions about this jumper. You are going to have to wait to the end of the video for that. To illustrate my point, to start us off, I'm going to brew a simple brew with this thing using the tabbed bagged Hario filters. I think that's a good benchmark, and I'll talk you through how I brew the switch. It is different so far into how I'm brewing the Clever, so it's not a kind of one for one here. I'll be brewing 15 grams of coffee to 250 grams of water, and I'll be running a 2-minute steep, a little stir, and a drain. Let's do that now. Now I kind of do a bloom phase at the moment, which is just add 2 to 1 and then give it a little swirl just to kind of get rid of any pockets of dry coffee before I infuse as a whole. Now, as I said, I do like infusion brewing. You can just let coffee and water steep and you're not worried about evenness of extraction. As long as all of the coffee is kind of getting wet, there's no pockets of dry coffee anywhere, you're having a pretty even extraction. And that's good, because with percolation, like a pour over or espresso, you're worried about evenness, you're worried about channeling. All of those things are a concern. Generally, I've been grinding pretty fine for this, just a little bit finer in some cases than kind of my cupping setting, because I've been sort of steeping for just 2 minutes before beginning the drawdown process. What I'll do then, I'll give it a little stir one way and the other, like in a V60, and then I'll drain it out. I'll flip the switch and away we'll go. So with this, initially the drawdown is pretty fast, and then it begins to slow down and almost choke a little bit. And you think it's going to take 30 seconds to drain, but it doesn't. It takes much longer than that. And what's likely happening is very fine particles are clogging the filter paper up, making it difficult for the liquid to pass through. And I had wondered, if that's the case, how much of the problem is the paper versus the bed? If this could happen faster, would it still taste really good? So we're done. That is about a 2-minute 10 drawdown phase. We're at a sort of 4 minutes 25 total brew time, which is a pretty long, slow brew time. And there's something about a slow drawdown that's just infuriating to me. It's just maddening to watch this thing happen very slowly. But if I wanted that bit to go faster, well, the question I had to answer was, how much extraction am I doing in the infusion phase and how much am I doing in the percolation phase? So what I'll need to do is replicate this brew, but skip the second stage. Let me do that now. Everything just the same, 250 grams. And a 2-minute steep. And as before, at 2 minutes, I'll give it that little stir. I'll let it rest for sort of 15 seconds to have some of that bed fall to the bottom. And then I'm going to make a terrible mess. I've never done this without making a mess, so I'm just accepting at this point. What I'm going to do is try and decant the liquid from the top of this through this V60 paper here to sort of, clarify it a little bit, to strain out whatever fines are suspended in there, but sort of skip the step where it flows through the bed. So wish me luck. That's about normal. So you can see here, there's the bed that we're trying to avoid. Nice and flat, one should note, at the bottom there, which is good. And a terrible mess, as usual. While this drains, I'll clean this up and we'll be back in just a second. So we now have two brews. We've got the regular immersion plus percolation phase, and then we've got the just immersion phase with a little bit of straining happening there just to get rid of the fines and that kind of stuff. These we can then test and measure to see the difference, both with tasting, which I think is very important, but also with one of these. It's a refractometer. This measures the speed of light through coffee, or more usefully, gives a refractive index of the liquid. It tells us how much stuff is dissolved in the coffee liquid, and we can calculate back from that how much of the ground coffee we extracted into the liquid that we're going to drink. So have a little stir. You do want to stir your filter coffee if you're testing it, much like you want to stir your espresso. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a video up here. You can take a drop, place it on the sensor, and away we test. Now the absolute number is not super important here. Yes, this is a percentage that suggests a good extraction, but that's not really the point. The point is the difference between the two. So here, about 1.35, it's coming up pretty consistently. Let's compare it to the other one. Oh, big difference. Huge difference, actually. Now, you might argue that 0.3 is not a huge difference of anything, but it turns out in brewed coffee, that is a big difference. But let's taste them. Is this a wild variation? That is very nice. That is very well extracted, super balanced, nice clarity, nice acidity. It's yummy, basically. This, based on this, should be pretty bad. And it's not great, but it's so much better than it should be. It's so much better than it should be. If you brewed a V60 and produced that strength and had that extraction, it would taste really bad. This doesn't. This has some texture and body and mouthfeel. It just feels a bit empty. I'm increasingly of the belief that there is something particularly useful about infusion brews for having what feels like a nice texture, nice mouthfeel to your coffee very easily. I think this kind of makes sense of those moments when someone grinds quite coarsely for a French press but still has a pretty good result. I think there's something about the infusion brewing that has a kind of tolerance of grind size that can kind of quite easily get you to something pretty good. I think that's interesting. But this cup is unquestionably better, right? There's no question at all in my mind. This is more complex, sweeter, more enjoyable, better finish. Everything about it is better. This is just surprisingly not bad. It's just not great either, though. So now I want to talk about the Sibarist papers. These are really interesting. I actually made a very rare Patreon-only video comparing these and a few other kind of third-party V60 filters, so I have looked at them before, but they are fast flow filters. They allow coffee to drain through the paper much quicker by being more porous. When you brew with these, you get a little bit of sediment in the cup. They're closer to a very fine metal filter than they are paper in some ways, or a kind of halfway house between those two. Like a fine metal filter and a paper filter, that's where they are. They don't do the clarity of cloth, but they still taste kind of like a paper filter. They're really interesting. They're also really expensive, and I'm also aware the Hario Switch is a little bit expensive, and I'm very lucky that I can play with these, and I hope my experiments yield some interesting learning. So I should acknowledge that these are expensive, both the brewer and the papers. Before I brew with these, though, and talk about why I think it's so interesting, there's a couple things to take care of. Firstly, this video has an ad in it, which means it also has a grinder giveaway. Right now, for every sponsored video, I'm giving away 5 Baratza Encores, trying to give them to people who could really do with a great grinder in their life. If you can afford a grinder right now and you need one, please just go and buy one from a local business. Support your local businesses right now more than ever. But if you're out of work, down on your luck, if life is hard, and a grinder would improve your life, enter the competition down below. You need to be in one of the 39 countries around the world where we can get you a grinder and warranty it afterwards with Baratza's support. So if you're not in those countries, I'm sorry, we'll try and do something for you in the future. Click the link down below. It's free to enter, and I wish you the best of luck. And this is possible because this video does have an ad in it. It's sponsored by Morning Brew. Morning Brew is a witty, useful, relevant newspaper that appears in your inbox Monday through Saturday, and it's free. I've actually been signed up for nearly 2 years now, and it is a great way to start the day. It's easy to wake up and just become instantly overloaded by news, finance, tech, all of this kind of stuff going on, but I like having something I can sit down and read and enjoy with a cup of coffee. And that's exactly where Morning Brew comes in. And I like it not just because it's digestible, neat pieces of news I can consume in that 5 minutes over coffee, but because it doesn't take everything too seriously. It's fun as well. There are book recommendations in there and often little trivia games and other things just to get the brain going in the morning. And like I said, it's free. So if you're interested in business or tech or finance, click the link down below. It takes less than 15 seconds and you can subscribe to Morning Brew today. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Everything the same as before. Little swirl. And we'll let this steep again for 2 minutes before we stir and flip the switch. And then go. And we're done. A little bit under 45 seconds, which is pretty fast. Now, this leaves me with a whole bunch of questions. If this drains really fast, are we missing out on contact time? Are we reducing our contact time and therefore dramatically reducing our extraction? At 45 seconds, it's nearly a minute and a half faster as a brew or shorter as a brew than with the regular Hario papers. What's that going to do? And also, if these papers are more porous, am I likely to see some bypass happening? Is liquid flowing out of the paper because it can quite easily instead of down through the bed? Is that going to drop my extraction a lot as well? There's only one way to find out. Let's measure it. Now, like I said, this does have a little bit more sediment in the brew. So having stirred it, I'm going to just decant a little bit through a new paper just to clarify it and take out any of that sediment. I don't need much liquid, but I do need to strain it properly to get a good refractive index reading. All right, let's get a little sample droplet here. It seems lower, but barely any lower. That additional contact time didn't dramatically increase our extraction, which is kind of notable. And if there is some bypass happening, well, it's not really damaging to the brew overall. How's the taste? Yeah, very good. It does have that nice immersion extraction profile that I really like. It's just very tasty, nice clarity, nice acidity. Would I go a little bit finer? I might actually, just to kind of bring it to a more balanced extraction point or something closer to the Hario paper. It would need maybe one tiny notch finer on a grinder. I really wouldn't worry about this longer brew time from a finer grind or a longer drawdown because these drawdowns are so fast because of these papers. And so you get, I think, a great result from a very enjoyable brew method. It's kind of easy to dial in. You get this nice immersion percolation combination. You can go pretty fine, get pretty high extractions, get great tasting cups of coffee that happen pretty quickly. And I don't mind a little tiny bit of sediment in my cup. I don't mind that at all, actually. It still tastes pretty clean. There's still some nice, fresh, crisp acidity to the cup, if that's what you're into. I'm a little bit impressed. And again, I will say, they are expensive. I know they're expensive to buy. There are new companies starting up, doing a new thing. That can often mean what you're doing is more expensive. I hope they grow. I'm kind of into what they're doing. I don't want to use Sibarist for everything. And sometimes I do want more clarity and more filtration than they offer. But I do like using them as a kind of steep and release filter in this particular setup with a switch. Would I recommend exactly the same thing for my Clever? No, I'd recommend a slightly different thing, but I will make a video about that very soon. I do really like the Clever dripper as a brew tool because it is so cheap, so easy to use, and it makes great coffee. But that's for another time. I did say I would tell you about this delightful Christmas jumper, and now is the time. At tens, hundreds, thousands, we decided we would do an ugly coffee Christmas jumper. We worked with artist Michael B. Myers on kind of pixel art, so you have everything from like an AeroPress to a drip pot, a takeaway cup, pour overs, Bueno kettles, latte art. This isn't a snowflake, this is a coffee flower. There's portafilters on my sleeves. These are knitted to order, so this isn't printed, this is actually knitted, and they are a single run. Once they're gone, they're gone. I know they're a little bit expensive, but we wanted to do it right and have them knitted, and that way they're just so much more awesome than like a printed sweatshirt. But if you want to know more, there's a link in the description down below. But for now, I'll hand it off to you. Have you used the Sibarist filters yet? Have you tried them? Have you tried the switch? Are you a Clever dripper fan? Are you waiting for that video? I'm sorry, it is coming soon. I would love to hear from you down in the comments below. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.